People will often say that Donald Trump has the characteristics of an infant. He behaves like a toddler, people say. Well, the fact is that there are a number of characteristic behaviours that occur at the infant stage that Donald Trump does actually exhibit. In this video I'm going to go through them, and I'm also going to go into why that is, what the actual reason is that these pretty unusual behaviours to see in an adult happen pretty regularly in Donald Trump. The first thing we see in Donald Trump is emotional dysregulation. By the time most of us become adults, we're able to regulate our emotions in a way that enables us to engage in discourse with people and, to sort of have a dialogue, have a back and forth that doesn't sort of bring all our emotions to the fore, that doesn't leave us to sort of become upset with, aggravate, or sort of emotionally flood people. So we learn to regulate ourselves in a way that enables us to engage in a fairly consistent and level discourse. Obviously, infants can't do that, so if something doesn't go their way, then they could end up in a sort of tantrum situation very quickly, or go into a stage of elation very quickly, so that their emotions won't be the same as adult emotions. This kind of emotional dysregulation is something that is frequently talked about with Trump. We've seen it before our own eyes when he was in front of somebody who is widely respected around the world, and yet in a major headline meeting in front of the world, he couldn't restrain himself from showing a deep anger, resentment and aggression that he had towards this man.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have. If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
Now that is of course what we saw in public in broad daylight, but many people who have written books about the first Trump White House and subsequently have talked about times when food has been thrown at the walls, when he's so angry, plates smashed, members of the White House administration having to wipe spaghetti and other foodstuffs off walls because he's been unable to restrain himself from just lashing out with huge anger, shouting a lot of the time at people. At one point, apparently, he lurched forward when he was in the White House limousine, in the presidential limousine, to grab the steering wheel off the driver because he wasn't going the direction he wanted him to. So this kind of thing has been reported by people behind the scenes in the White House, as well as the public displays of anger, aggression, disinhibited emotion. That certainly is even more the case in private too. So emotional dysregulation, something that you do see at an infant stage, is something that we clearly see quite regularly in Trump. The other one is black and white thinking. Infants, at an early age of 1 or 2 years old, will think in terms of the world being good or bad. In fact, there's been good research and writing around this, all the way back to the Freudians and Freud and Freud's daughter Anna Freud, talking about good mum, bad mum. They even see the same individual in both lights, because they believe that the person who does good can not be the same person as a person who does bad. So they believe that there are two mothers. It's called splitting. So there are things that infants do that see the world in terms of black and white. All good is on one side, all bad is on another. And again, Trump does the same. So journalists who are for him are welcomed. They're invited to the White House. They are lauded. They are complimented effusively by Trump. And those who he doesn't like are described as enemies of the people. And he actually rails against them and gets his supporters to describe them as public enemies, and actually, as a result, to send death threats to them. So these people, journalists, often fear for their lives. I have a great deal of respect for journalists in this day and age who try to cover the truth despite the actual personal risk to them, because of the way in which Trump vilifies them and then leads his own supporters to start to attack them publicly. So this black and white mentality, also seeing people and colleagues around the world in that way, is very clear. And he has a sort of enemies list of people who he wants to attack, who he wants to try to put into great danger and whose lives he wants to destroy. And we saw that for the first time with the arrest of John Bolton recently, which I made a video about not long ago. And then other people like Mike Pence, he's taken security detail away from them. Same with Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton. So there are people who in his enemies list, there are people who could never ever come into the light. So that black and white thinking is also there clearly with Trump, and I don't think any observer would deny that. Instant gratification is something else we see with Trump. He does what makes him feel good in that moment. So, for example, when he's negotiating about, trying to end the war, at least to try and get the Nobel Peace Prize, he's not thinking strategically. He's not actually organising his thoughts and organising his plans step by step to try and achieve his aims. He just does what makes him feel good. So he goes to Alaska with Vladimir Putin thinking, very quickly, we'll have ended the war in Ukraine. It'll be sorted within a matter of hours. He actually believes that himself. He wants that gratification. And then he wants European leaders to come to him and say, you did this, you did a fantastic thing. He wants the gratification from other people telling him that he's knocked it out of the park. He scored a goal. He's absolutely delivered for the team. And everybody around the cabinet table has to also feed his need for instant gratification. They can't have a discussion with him as the leader of their team to say, look, these are the policies we're implementing. We're going through these various steps. Hopefully it will work and hopefully we'll get some credit for that. No, they immediately give him credit. They immediately tell him, what you've already done is brilliant. What's happening is fantastic. And if people don't report that to him, he's not interested in hearing from them, right? So he wants gratification in the here and now. He wants to make sure that any impulse he experiences is fed straight away. So he has this impulse to be praised and to be considered a great president, and he wants people to feed that back to him straight away, rather than working the hard yards needed to get you there. So that desire for instant gratification comes across in his food choices, apparently, and just in the way he conducts himself in his life, the choices he makes, whether that's in terms of predatory sexual behavior or other things. That is a key feature. Again, you see that in toddlers, you see young people, infants, who will do what makes them feel good in the moment. Of course, because they're infants, they don't know any better. And so that is another key feature of Donald Trump. Confabulation is something else that toddlers do. You'll hear this to 2, 3, 4-year-olds who will talk about something, and then they'll start filling in with details that never happened because they're just sort of using words to fill up, to try and feel the emotion that they're in at the moment. So they'll start describing events that didn't happen and things that never happened because they just, they feel a certain way and they're putting words to that feeling, and it doesn't always mean, that really happened. And, you play along with it, and it's fun. And confabulation, as I say, is something that infants and toddlers do. It's also something that Donald Trump does, but it's something you rarely ever see in adults who will start saying things that are clearly not true, that they themselves know isn't true, and that everybody around them knows isn't true. But because it feels right in that moment, because it goes along with how you're feeling, because it fits the emotion that you're in, you say them. And as I say, that is a characteristic of toddlers. It is not a characteristic of adults, but it is a characteristic of Donald Trump. And we all know there are plenty of times when he says things that are patently untrue. And we know that everybody in the room knows they're untrue. We know that he knows they're untrue, but he'll keep saying them because that's how he feels. It's more about how he feels than what he actually thinks, because the thought is limited in the ways that it is with toddlers. So again, that instant gratification, that black and white thinking, that confabulation, that emotional dysregulation, these are all factors that you see regularly in toddlers as part of growing up, but they exist in Donald Trump. Now, why do they exist in Donald Trump? As I say, these are things you don't normally see in adults. And the reason almost certainly is that something happened to him as an infant. And we actually know what that is. Because in 1948, when Donald Trump was 2 years old, his brother Robert was born. And at that point, his mother suffered some very severe complications after the pregnancy. And back in those days, that would have required you to stay in hospital for a long time. In fact, she was in hospital for a year, possibly more than that. So he had missed almost his only caregiver at that time because his father was completely absent, and the only times he was available was when he was emotionally unavailable or aggressive and impatient, tempestuous towards the children. So he didn't actually have a caregiver there to nurture him and help him grow. He experienced this immediate huge loss. Now at that age, at the age of 2, you actually don't know if your parent will ever return. Anybody who's dropped a child off at nursery or childcare knows that's exactly how it works. Because when they're dropped off the first couple of times, they honestly don't know that they'll ever see you again, which is why they get so distraught and why they get so elated when you turn up to pick them up at the end of the day. And it must have been like that for Donald when he didn't see his mother, and then she didn't turn up the next day or the next day, and he must have thought he'll never see her again. And so this trauma, this deep grief and loss that occurs at this age can really affect your psyche. Now, when anybody is traumatized in their childhood in a major way, what happens is often a part of the psyche will remain at that infant stage. So if it was later in life, then if you have a major trauma, some kind of abuse at teenage life, then a part of you will remain as a teenager. Whatever age you were when the trauma happened, part of your development freezes at that point. The only thing that can change it is reparative relationships later on, relationships with other people who can help you appreciate the depths of the trauma you experienced and understand who you really are as an adult and help you grow through it. But that might happen through therapy, or it might happen through relationships with other people in your life. But that, of course, never happened to Donald. He never had reparative relationships, not even with his mother, who came back, who still wasn't able to forge those close relationships with any of her children. Father, of course, as I said, aloof at best, aggressive at worst. And then subsequently, he forged his own relationships in that way with other people. So he never had reparative relationships. He never had any degree of self-work, self-awareness that enabled him to repair that deep wound he occurred to him as an infant. And at that time, so much of his psyche and his personal development was frozen that he kind of stayed that way. So many of those characteristics stayed, and it is reported that he was so disruptive as a child, displaying all of these characteristics of a toddler, that his parents sent him to military school for that reason. But again, that didn't take it out to him, because that wasn't a reparative relational environment. It just imposed some discipline on certain behaviours. So he's maintained all of these behaviours from toddlerhood all the way up to adulthood because of what happened to him in that age, and then what didn't happen to him after that, like it would have happened to many other people, and helped to restore them into a sort of adult space. That's why, unfortunately, Donald Trump has ended up exhibiting so many characteristics of a toddler. And yet, because of that, not only does he suffer, not only do the people around him suffer, but right now, because of the job he has, the entire world is suffering from someone who has the characteristics of an infant, but sits in the Oval Office in the most powerful position on the planet today. I hope you like my video. As a psychiatrist who loves politics and economics and philosophy, I love to make videos like this, and you can really help promote this video to other people and get it on your feed more by liking and commenting and subscribing to the video as well. We have a wonderful community of people here who comment and support each other through this very traumatic period of world history that we're going through right now. I also hope you consider becoming a subscriber to the channel and also subscribing to my e-newsletter. There's a link in the description, and that way we can stay in touch outside the channel, so you can keep abreast of all of the content that I'm making on an ongoing basis. The latest of which actually is my latest book called We the People. Very, very proud of this book. It's actually a novel, a fiction book written by myself and the famous award-winning author T.J. McGregor. Together we wrote a book about what the future might look like. Bit of a dystopian novel, but what might happen if autocracy goes to its next stage, AI predicting the potential end of humanity. I actually made a video about that, it really happened. And how things might pan out in this dystopian world, and actually how a band of committed, passionate, progressive people managed to change the trajectory, and not in the way that you think. It's not just by running a candidate and opposing the autocrat, but actually by deepening the democracy that we have and engaging in a real participatory form of democracy that sort of shifts the needle and gets us back to basics and helps us sort of rebuild our democracy. And that's within the context of a really compelling, gripping story, a bunch of fascinating characters, and I assure you, you will not be able to sort of stop turning the page until you get to the end of the book. That's what all the reviewers have said so far. Lots of people love it, and I hope you can get it. You can get it on Amazon, any of the global Amazon bookstores out there. Please do order your copy of We the People. Just put We the People Russell Razak and you'll be able to find it inside Amazon as well. Also, I hope you consider becoming a member of the channel. You can subscribe to a couple of different membership levels. All members of the channel also get some free ebooks that I produce once a month. You can buy those ebooks too from russellsbooks.com. That's russellsbooks.com, and every month I produce a new ebook on that channel, which is really about, these are the non-fiction books I produce with my team, which is really about how to learn about the world around us and the psychologies of the people who govern us, but also how to learn about ourselves, deepen our own self-awareness in a way that helps us navigate this difficult world we're in right now. So those are sort of self-help books that are produced every month, and if you're a member of the channel, you get a sort of 100% discount on those books every month. Otherwise, you can go to russellsbooks.com, as I say, and buy them anytime you like. I really hope you can become a part of this community, as I say. So this sort of supportive community, validating and helping each other, is really worth being a part of, and I hope you can join us as we all join forces to create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.